right, in this demonstration, I'm going to take you through the process of creating your color wheel, okay, using your paint kit. Now, here's the big thing with the color wheel, okay, so we've talked about primaries, secondaries, and tertiary colors in class. So the primaries, those are your first colors that you get, normally like teaching in the building, for example, with watercolors, or even with watercolors, we'd be using liquid watercolors, but in the tempera paint, I would only give you those primary colors. And so those, again, are the red, the yellow, and the blue right here. Okay, now if you use this blue instead, that's okay. This one looks like it might be a little bit lighter of a red or more of a red-orange, but we're looking at this one in here where there's really, where the one that has the yellow in it, where you're really using the red, the yellow, and the blue only. So don't be tempted to use these other things. So again, I don't want to see when we get to like violet, right, that you go in here, here's the violet, and I'm just going to put it in there, okay, because that's like, you know, that doesn't show me your understanding of how to make the color. That just shows me that you can get this wet and you can just paint it in this spot, okay. So if you do that, you're not going to get points for that. So make sure that you're mixing every single one of these colors with the exception of the yellow, the red, and the blue, because that's what we start out with, the red, the yellow, and the blue, okay. So yes, so you got to mix your oranges, your greens, and your violets with those three colors. All right, so start off, and again, you can use this tray to mix your colors if you'd like, but just make sure you wipe it out with like your paper towel, or like I have a little rag here at the end of your painting session, or even in between, because you're going to need, you know, to mix lots of different colors, and so you're going to have to clean this out periodically. Okay, so I prefer a rag. It soaks it up a little bit better. Paper towel works fine. And I've got my lids over here for mixing my colors. I'm going to go ahead and get some water here. And you could be tempted to pour the water into the area. I kind of like to dip it and sort of shake it a little bit. You could also take like a small spoon, like a teaspoon or something, and sort of spoon some in over here. That would work out well as well. These brushes are a little bit smaller than the brushes that I normally have students use for the for watercolors, but they came with the kit and they're a good size for being able to paint sort of mediums and details as well. It just takes a little bit longer if you're trying to cover like a larger area. Okay, so as I start out, I'm going to start out with my yellow. I'm going to go clockwise for a while, and then eventually I'm going to go counterclockwise when I get to the greens, but I'm going to go to the right clockwise from the yellow all the way until I get to the blue. Okay, so don't just paint the yellow, the red, and the blue. Don't just do that. We're just starting with the yellow. So I've got my bucket here, which is the washing out, and I've got this one here, which is the clean water for getting and activating the paint. So I've got to activate it first. Just kind of drag it around a little bit. And I've got a test paper over here, so I can say that's pretty good. I'm going to add a little more water. Okay, so I've got my yellow. And I'm going rather quickly, but you should not. You should be careful. You know, it's also an exercise in being careful in terms of using the tools. Okay, so there's my yellow. So now I'm going to actually have to take this yellow, and I'm going to have to go over to my mixing area here. And I need a little bit more yellow than that. That looks about right. That's good and yellow. All right, now I'm going to change colors. Anytime you do that, rinse in your rinsing. Okay, cap off, dry a little bit, just wipe a little bit dry. And then I'm going to get my other colors. So for my yellow, I need my red. Okay, so our primaries are my red, my yellow, and my blue. So in order to get these oranges in here, it's where we mix our red and our yellow together. Okay, so I'm going to get some water on my brush, get a little bit of red, and I'm just going to get a little bit of red. And I'll mix that up. Okay, so it changed a little bit. And then I'll go ahead and paint this here. Now mine's a little light. You could probably use a little bit more yellow in there, so I can grab a little more yellow. There we go. Okay. It's also hard because it's becoming a little bit transparent because my table's black. So I'm going to put a piece of paper under there so that it might, there we go, show off the colors a little bit better. All right. So now with this color, I just need to add a little bit more red to this same bit here. So I'm just going to take a little bit more. Mix that around. Say, I might need a little bit more than that. Take a little bit more. Till I get my good orange here, which looks pretty good. Okay, now I need my red orange. So to do that, I just need more red in there. I may have to go back to my palette, rinse that out a little bit. It's always good to rinse between colors. And so this one, my red orange, it's still an orange. And watch out, because you get these little bubbles on there, and they'll drip in your painting, and they kind of mess things up. Okay, where this has a lot more red in it than it does my yellow. Okay, but there's still a big difference. If I get my straight red in here, okay, where there's a big difference between those two. Now I can go ahead and put in my red. And I noticed here that I didn't dilute it as much as I should have. Okay, and again, your red is going to look this. It's not going to be like this red, and it shouldn't, you know, because this is diluted. We're using watercolors, so you're not going to get this. Okay, we could maybe add a little bit more to that and layer it a little bit. That's about as deep red as you're going to get. Okay, because this is watercolor. We're diluting the pigments. It's not meant to be super vibrant necessarily. Now, as you move on to the violets, again, starting out here with the red, I'll be adding small, tiny amounts of blue to that red in order to get those violets. And just, you know, as I go, I'm just kind of carefully adding tiny little bits more here and there to make sure that it's slowly moving into a violet. And again, for the next one, starting from the red violet into the violet, adding a little bit more of that blue into that first color that I made for the red violet. And then moving on to the blue violet, just again adding slightly a little bit more blue to get that blue violet. All right, so now I'm going to show you the greens. So the greens, we go this way. We go from the yellow to the blues. That means I'm starting with yellow and adding a little blue each time. Now, just like with the violets and the oranges, you're adding a tiny bit of the darker color, of course, it being blue, to the yellow. And as you do it each time, make sure it's just the smallest amount, because that blue is going to change the yellow very quickly. So I go in here and I add a tiny bit, like I even scraped a little bit off my brush, and add a teeny tiny bit, and that moved and that changed very fast. So again, as I add a little bit more to get the green and blue-green, it's going to change really quickly, so watch how much blue you're adding to each color each time. All right, so here we have our color wheel. Again, so we've got, anytime you're starting with the yellow, moving towards the red, so you need the red and the yellow. Start out with the yellow, add tiny bits of red to your yellow, a little bit more red to that same color of orange for here, orange, and a little bit more red to that same color here to get the red orange. Repeat from red to blue. Start out with your red, add a tiny bit of the blue to the red for here, add a tiny bit more blue to this color to get this color here, and again we're always mixing in our little mixing trays. And then for the blue violet, you're adding a little bit more blue to this color to make this blue violet. And again, the yellows work this way, and again, just use tiny bits as you go, okay, so that you have that small amount of change, because it changes really, really quickly.